Welcome everybody to this advanced Jive video. We have a focus on a figure called the Coca Rola today, and also we're going to have a look at these things called jazz squares. Let's have a look. So we're going to focus on these jazz squares and the Coca Rola today. Now these are what we call open figures. They're not in the standard basic book. So being not of the basic book, the terminology is a little bit fluid. Some people call the jazz squares the Coca Rola and other people don't. So we're going to go over everything from scratch, go over the basic moves and how to build them up into the Coca Rola figure, and also give you another version so that you can use this on the floor in a slightly different way with different partners as well. Let's have a closer look. So to start all of this, we're going to have a look at these things called the jazz squares. There are only 4 beats, 4 nice and slow beats, and they can be repeated as many times as you like, and we can pimp them up in a number of different ways. So let's have a look, and that will form the heart of what we're going to do for the rest of today's session. So your very basic jazz square looks a little bit like this. Now this is performed in shadow positions, so the lead and follow steps are exactly the same. So both dancers are going to start on their left foot. They're going to take a quick beat to cross over their right, a quick beat to step back on their right, a quick beat to step to the side on their left, and a quick beat to come forward on their right. Quick, 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 quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. The jazz squares are generally danced in twos. So if 4 beats, 4 sides of the square takes up 1 square, you're generally going to dance at least 2 in a row. So generally we're counting 8 steps, but you can dance more, and we'll get into how that works later on. So a set of jazz squares in Jive would be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When starting out dancing, the basic jazz squares is enough, but we are going to go through some hip actions and then some arm actions to really pimp them up so that when you get used to the footwork, you can make them look as flashy as they deserve to be. So we're going to add some hip work into those jazz squares. The general rule here is whichever leg is the stabilizing leg, you are going to swivel slightly to that direction. So if we're moving our left leg first, our stabilizing leg is the right, we're going to swivel to the right, then to the left, then to the right, then to the left. So we get this opposite pattern occurring as we move one foot but swivel slightly to the other direction. To the right, to the left, to the right, to the left. Getting that hip swiveling action will really help you get into the spirit of this figure. But it's actually really difficult to do by itself. So once we've got the foot pattern down and we start to add the hips, we're going to add some arms with it, which will actually help develop those hips and make it easier and a lot more fun to dance. So let's add those arms now. We're going to follow a very similar rule of thumb here with our arms as we did with the swivels of our feet. If I'm moving my left foot, I'm going to be using my right arm, and these are just moving slightly forward. So we have a cross and slightly forward, and as I change over we have slightly forward, slightly forward, slightly forward. So that is really all we need to talk about for the jazz squares. Now, depending on which resource you're looking at, those jazz squares may actually be referred to as the Coca Rola. And certainly it forms the body of the Coca Rola itself. However, because these jazz squares are danced in the shadow position, we need some way of getting into shadow position, which means the man must dance a foot change. He invariably has to dance either one more or one fewer steps than the lady and get her into the correct position so that you can then dance those jazz squares on the same foot. Then, of course, at the end of them, he must do the opposite so that you can return to dancing on the opposite feet as you would do in any other regular position. So, some resources classify a particular way of foot changing, dancing those squares and then foot changing back as the Coca Rola in its entirety. So we're going to have a look at that version of the Coca Rola, but we're also going to have a look at another version later on of how to foot change, do those jazz squares and foot change back so you can decide which one you would like to do. So what we're going to go over now is what you may find in some resources as the Coca Rola. It includes a foot change to get into the shadow position and then a very particular foot change to get out of the shadow position again. What you will notice is that when we're dancing those jazz squares in the body of the figure, there is no hold. So this means that there are a very particular number of steps so that the man and lady know when to dance that second foot change and return back to a standard open position. A 5, 6, 7, and back. Replace foot change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Foot change. What you just saw then was what some references call the Coca Rola, with those jazz squares featuring in the middle. The beauty about doing it in this version is that there are no holds, which means that if one of you wants to get real hippie and real army with it and the other person doesn't so much, then it's completely fine. As long as we count the correct number of steps so that we're going into and out of it at the correct time, all is well. So let's have a look at that first foot change and then we can add our jazz squares into the middle to keep going with the Coca Rola. We're going to focus on the gents step first. Now, in any figure, in any Latin dance, if a foot change needs to be danced, it really is the man's responsibility to dance it. It is really quite impossible to lead the lady to change her rhythm without pre-arranging that that is what is going to happen. So, the basic rhythm of Jive has a quick, quick, and then quicker, quick, quicker, quick for the chassé portions. That is what the lady is expecting to dance. If we need to change it up, it's the gent's responsibility. So your steps, gents, here, we're going to hold our weight over that in the quicker, quick, and we will dance 4 quicks. Quick, 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 quick. And in that way, the lady gets 1 extra step, and we are now on the same feet. Let's have a look and see how that operates in practice. We're going to dance 1 and 2 of a link, so a quick, quick. We are now going to close our feet and turn a quarter for a quick and hold on quick, and move a small step to the right on our right foot, quick. With a little bit of speed, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If we concentrate on the lady's footwork now, it is not dissimilar from other Jive figures. She's going to dance the first 2 steps of a link, 1, 2, but then she's going to be led to turn a quarter to the left over the first chassé, the quick, and it's then the lead portion that will lead her into the Coca Rola and not another figure that starts in a similar way. Let's have a closer look at that. 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the basic footwork for the gents and the ladies' side of the foot change to get into the Coca Rola. But as you can see, the steps for the ladies are quite similar to other figures in the Jive. So how does she know that it's going to be a Coca Rola? Well, that is all in the lead, and in this particular version, the letting go is a very big lead for the lady. So let's have a look at how we can lead the lady into it, get her past the gentleman to the other side, and then let go with enough time so that she knows to follow with those jazz squares and not something else. 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So, gentlemen, the lead to get into the Coca Rola has 2 main portions. One, the first portion is to get the lady from this side to our side. We're not really travelling forward, we're more staying on the spot. So we really need to get the lady to travel. The second portion is, of course, to let go, having made her turn to the correct direction. we're going to turn to the right, the ladies are going to turn to the left. So we need to start the lead in a very similar way to a change of places, which gets them to move under the arm. But we're going to keep that arm lower so that she definitely knows that she's not going under it. And we're going to bring it through with just a little bit more tension so that the lady knows that she has to come past us. And then at the right moment, we're going to let go, and then the lady's on her own. And when we get to that point, ladies, you know that we're in some sort of figure where there is no hands. We've got some sort of visual lead. We're ready for the Coca Rola, and we can get onto that same foot. So if we examine that slowly, we do our 1, 2 of a link, which is exactly the same. We have 1, 2. Now here I'm going to commence to bring the lady across, but you'll notice I'm keeping this lower than any sort of underarm turn, and I'm closing my feet on the spot. 3. Okay, now the lady has a 3 so she's got one extra step. I'm leading her across as I hold, and now I'm taking a small step. The lady's already got a little bit more momentum, so she's taking a slightly bigger step. 4, and now you can see we are in our shadow position. Lindsay is not beside me, we're not in a right side position, and I have only taken a small step, allowing Lindsay's momentum to carry her past me, so I haven't ended up behind her in more like a tandem position. So now we have enough room to cross that left over the right and enter those jazz squares. So once we've performed that foot change, we now just add those jazz squares onto it. In this particular figure, because we are in the shadow position with no hold whatsoever, we are going to do 2 jazz squares for a total of 8 beats. Don't add any more, don't take any away without pre-arranging it with your partner, because there is no way to lead them out of this figure without having done a set number of steps. So we're going to do the prescribed foot change and then 8 beats for the 2 jazz squares. 5, 6, 7, and foot change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that covers the first foot change, and then we added those jazz squares on. So it's a very simple knitting together. We've done the foot change, we're both ready on that left foot. Now we want to perform those jazz squares. So all that remains is to add the second foot change to get back to an open or closed position so that we can continue on with the dance on that regular gents left, ladies right style. So this particular foot change takes the form of 2 chassés for the gentleman, and again the lady is performing her regular jive rhythm. So in this sense, we're taking an extra step than the lady. We're taking a quicker quick with 6 steps in total. The lady's taking a 1, 2, 3, a 4 with only 5. So it's sort of the opposite type of foot changes to what we did to get into the figure. Into the figure we had 4 quicks, removing a step compared to the lady. This time, gents, we're going to add an additional one rather than taking one away. So gents, if we focus on your footwork, it's really quite simple because it's basic jive. I've just crossed my feet over. I'm ready to use my left foot. I'm simply going to take 2 jive chassés, quite compact and on the spot, but also we need to make sure that they're adaptive enough so that we can follow the lady out and capture her into the correct position if required. But all we're going to dance is a left, and a right. Ladies, your footwork will feel very jivey as well because we have our 2 steps and then a chassé. Now, depending on how much hip swivel and other actions you're putting in, you will need to turn anywhere between 3/8 to a half to turn back to the gentleman. Whereas on the first foot change, we both turned a quarter to go from facing each other to facing the same way. In this version, the gentleman doesn't turn and the lady needs to catch up. You're going to progress forward on your left foot, starting to turn left, continuing to turn when you take a quick step on your right foot, and then you should be able to perform either a compact chassé or a backward chassé, performing on the left foot, left, ready to move your right foot into the back replace of whatever follows next. 5, 6, 7, and quick. So ladies, there is no lead for this particular foot change. We know that we're in a Coca Rola, we know that we're going to do those 8 quick steps of those 2 jazz boxes. After the completion of that 8th step, you are simply going to perform those turning steps to then get back to the man. At the end of the figure, we're going to be in an open facing position. We will have taken the appropriate handhold for what the leader wants to do next, and we will continue with our 1-2 of a link into whichever comes after that. So let's put everything together. 5, 6, 7, and back, replace, foot change, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, foot change, and into our 1-2 of a link to follow with whatever we need to. 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is what many call the Coca Rola. That entirety including those 2 foot changes in and out with the jazz squares in the middle. Now, whether you call it the Coca Rola or call it jazz squares or whatever you call it doesn't matter. But we're now going to have a look at another figure that uses those jazz squares in the middle. It's a type of Coca Rola, it gets you to the same position, but it's a variant of what we've just done. Still requires, of course, a foot change in and out, but there are some marked differences, so you have some options on the floor. A 5, 6, 7, and back, replace, foot change, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, back, replace, foot change, and into whatever comes next. So you'll notice in that version, the guts of it is basically the same, but there are some marked differences. There's a different foot change to get into it. We actually retain a cuddle position in shadow rather than that look no hands, and then we have a different foot change coming out of it. So we're going to go over the differences, and then you can choose which one you do and when. So gents, let's have a look at your footwork first. Now, the rhythm of the foot change at the start is the same as in the previous version. You are going to dance 4 quicks. So you're going to remove a chasse, remove a step compared to the lady. But instead of dancing it in more of an underarm change of places type fashion, but keeping that hand flatter, we're going to dance it in more of a stop and go fashion. So you're going to turn less, if at all, and you're going to progress forward with 2 very small walks rather than a closing quarter turn and then a small side step. So let's have a look at that. So if we focus on the footwork, same rhythm, it is the 1-2 of a link, but now I'm going to progress with 2 forward small steps, turning as appropriate. Ladies, your footwork is very similar as well. The main difference will be the amount of turn, which will go up or down slightly depending on what happens with the arms, which we'll go over next. You're going to dance 1 and 2 of a link, and you are going to progress into your first chasse on the right and turning to the left. But as we said before, for the gent steps, in more of a stop and go fashion than an underarm turn fashion. So let's have a look and see how that works. 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can see the differences in the footwork for this first foot change are quite minor, but the differences in the arm work is quite major, and the slight differences in the footwork will be moderated by what happens with the lead up top. Gentlemen, what you're going to do is you're actually going to offer your right hand to the lady's left, and as we bring them through into their stop and go type figure, we're actually going to catch them in a cuddle hold. So this is quite a tight shadow position. Ladies, you will feel almost closer than a New Vogue type shadow position, really on the gentleman's hip. We are in a contact position. And we're going to maintain that 2-handed hold right the way through those jazz squares. So it is going to bring a very different feel. Now the footwork for the jazz squares is basically the same, but we're not going to have as much hip twist, we're certainly not going to have as many arms putting in, but there is a little bit of rotation to compensate. So it does take a little bit of a different feel. But before we get to that, let's add those arms into that foot change to get man and lady into the correct position and on the correct foot, and then get into those squares. So we're going to perform our first foot change. It has the 1 to 2 of the link. Towards the end of the second step of the link, you really want to be offering that second hand, and the lady will take that and you can lead her into that cuddle type position where we have 1, 2, and here you can see the arms are starting to come up. We have our two-handed position, but we're going to lead the lady in, and I'm going to walk forward 3, 4 as the lady is chasséing. Now, I've walked forward by choice. I've performed the foot change. The lady doesn't know that we have performed the foot change. She's performed her chassé. But we are now on the correct foot. We both have our weight on the right foot, ready to go into those jazz squares, crossing on the left. 5, 6, 7, and back, replace, foot change. So once we have performed the foot change and we're in that cuddle hold and we're on the correct foot, it's as simple as adding those jazz squares at the start. But because of the closeness of that position in that contact hold, we are going to dance them slightly differently. We're going to stay a little bit lower, we're going to dance them a little bit smoother, and we have to make sure that we take very small steps. We are going to turn it slightly to the left, slightly in that reverse direction, but we're not going to really try and turn it. We're going to allow it to turn and allow it to develop, but not really try for anything too dramatic. So let's add those together and put that into our foot change and see how those jazz squares differ from the previous version of the Coca Rola. 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can start to see the differences between those jazz squares and the ones from the Coca Rola. Very low in the hips, no swinging, certainly no arms because we're maintaining that cuddle hold, and nice and smooth. There is another major advantage of this version, particularly on the social floor compared to the Coca Rola. The Coca Rola, like other Latin moves, particularly say the chase and the follow my leader from cha-cha, is a very defined figure. It has X number of steps and they must be danced because the portion in the middle has no hold. This version maintains you in that cuddle position, which means if I want to dance more than just 2 jazz squares, maybe I want to do 3, maybe I'm a little bit boxed in or I'm on the wrong position or wrong angle, I can do 3, 4, 5, don't do too many, but you can add as many as you like because you can actually lead the lady through. The other advantage, as you will see from the foot change that we're about to go to over to get out of the figure, is that you can then lead the lady into other shadow type moves. So if you know other shadow moves, you can do this version of the Coca Rola. You can put her into the shadow type position in the cuddle hold, and then at the appropriate moment let go or continue on into other shadow figures before dancing your foot change. So it has a certain versatility to it, although some would argue that the lower and smoother nature of the jazz squares in this version do remove a certain essence out of that jazz type feel. I'll leave that up to you to explore and decide for yourself. But let's go over that next foot change and then we can start putting it all together. So let's have a look at that foot change out of this version of the Coca Rola, or using the jazz squares, however you prefer. Whereas the first foot change was quite similar for gents and for ladies, but some slight modifications with the turn, this foot change out is quite different. Gents, you're going to dance 6 slow steps, so no chassés compared to the previous Coca Rola with 2 chassés. Ladies, you're going to dance 7 steps. You're going to dance 4 quicks and then a chassé. Gents, let's have a look at your variation of the foot change. This could easily be described as the first 2 steps of a jazz square, so we're going to have that crossing step and that back step, and then the first 2 steps of a link with 2 walking steps. Or putting it another way, we're going to do 2 steps of a jazz square and then perform the same foot change we did to get into this figure. So it would look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ladies, let's have a look at your steps now. The first 4 steps are exactly the same as the gentleman's, so they could be described as the first 2 steps of another jazz square and the first 2 steps of a link from the leader's perspective. However, after that, you're going to curl out of the man's cuddle hold. He's going to pull you out. You're needing to turn to the right to uncoil yourself, and you're going to do that with a chassé, therefore adding a step compared to the gentleman and getting back onto your right foot when he's on his left. 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 6. 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 6. All that remains is to now put this version all together. We have the foot change at the start, we've done our jazz squares and we've noted the differences with doing them in that shadow type cuddle position, and now we have the foot change out. One final thing to note though before we do that is this can feel a little bit even. We have 18 even counts for the gentleman. You're going to count 18 beats without a chassé. You have 4 to get in for your foot change, 2 complete jazz squares in the middle, and then the first 2 beats of a jazz square and 4 beats for your final foot change, adding up to 18. So don't let that put you off in the middle of it. Don't let that worry you that you're not chasséing. We are still on the correct foot. We're still doing it properly, and you'll be able to chassé all you like in the next figure when you come out. So let's put it all together and have a look. A 5, 6, 7, and back, replace, foot change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, back, replace, foot change. A 5, 6, 7, and. Well, guys and girls, this brings us to the end of our session on the jazz squares and the Coca Rola, no matter how you decide to define them. We hope you have enjoyed this session. We hope you can put this to good use, whether it's in your lounge room that doesn't take up much room at all, or whether you next get back onto the floor. We hope you can pull these out and have a little bit of fun. Remember your hips, remember to smile, remember your arms, and just enjoy your jive no matter where and how you're doing it. See you next time.